Alright, so I am in Harlem, at the Black Mecca, the beacon of culture, creativity, and resilience, a place in which stands at the crossroads of the African diaspora. I want to focus on three sites in which highlights the cultural connectivity within the African diaspora, specifically within Harlem. The three sites is going to be the Schomburg Center, Arturo Schomburg Center, the Apollo. Man, is it going to be Harlem without some music? The Arturo Schomburg Center, the Apollo, and Sylvia's restaurant. Before we get into the sites, it's important to highlight the Great Migration.
African-American Great Migration was, in fact, one of the most significant demographic transformations in United States history.
Most who left the South were heading for larger northern cities. Chicago, New York City, Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland all experienced significant surges in population.
740,000 African Americans lived outside of the South in 1900. As the 20th century progressed, this number eventually rose to more than 10 million living in other regions of the country.
So that's why we had the creation of like Detroit, so the creation of Atlanta, New York, and Harlem specifically, where a lot of black peoples moved from the South into these densely populated urban areas. And that's where we see Harlem kind of being created today. Just a quick quote that will set the stage for this video from Stephen A. Reich's work. He says, "The Harlem Renaissance was not just a cultural movement, but a diasporic collaboration that bridged continents." And it's going to be very important and indicative of what we see today at the Schomburg Center especially, and then from the other two businesses of the Apollo and Sylvia's restaurant. It's cool to see that not only a New York public library is named after just somebody with an African descent, but he's also Puerto Rican. So you're highlighting these different types of cultures by naming Arturo Schomburg, who's one of the first people back in 1926 to be able to donate a lot of his personal archive of historical works to the Schomburg Center, which is now named the Schomburg Center, but the New York Public Library at the time, kind of being a pioneer in not only creating his own type of archive of manuscripts of black art, black history, but also being able to have the wherewithal to donate and to give something back to your community. You know, being from 1926 to 1938 is when I believe he was donating, and then thus became the curator for Center of Black Research for Harlem. It's just very cool that a Afro-Puerto Rican person is the highlight of this. All right, so we touched a little bit on the historical context of the Schomburg Center, but going a little bit into the modern context, contemporary, where we see multiple exhibits happening within the Schomburg Center highlighting Afro-Cuban, Afro-Caribbean descent, African diaspora descent within these exhibits. So one that I just saw was Code Switch, which is very exciting to see, and then also a James Baldwin exhibit. But it's interesting to see that at 1926, when this public library started shifting into Arturo Schomburg's kind of vision and curation, that it still stands today, where we see, it's 2024 and exhibits are still highlighting African diaspora descent, and history manuscripts and kind of being showcased and being kept here. It's very dope because you see it right across from the Harlem Hospital as well. So it's very regional, it's very black, it's very historical, and just to see that this is still here today just showcases not only the connectivity within the African diaspora, but just how accessible this is towards a lot of Harlemites and people that just live here. I mean, if I were to turn the camera right now, you see this is such a busy street. It's right off of Malcolm X and Lenox, and right off of 135th. So, very homey. All right, you see that sign behind me? That's Sylvia. Sylvia is known as the queen of soul food. Why? Because this place right here that she started in 1962 has been one of the cultural relics of Harlem.
Is the queen of soul food. Sylvia started cooking when she was 7 years old. Her mom was a midwife and a farmer in a little town of Hemingway, about 50 miles from Myrtle Beach. She was waiting tables, worked her way up to cooking, to managing multiple restaurants that Mr. Johnson had. Then, in 1962, Mr. Johnson decided that he needed to sell the restaurant, and he offered Johnson's Luncheonette to my grandmother. And on August 1st, 1962, Sylvia's restaurant was born.
This was not only just an amazing soul food restaurant, but it was also a place in which a lot of activists, black celebrities, and kind of like people within the diaspora were able to come and convene and eat. You even have it to the likes of where you see Barack Obama, Al Sharpton, and other black celebrities be pictured here because it has been such of a cultural relic because of it. Sylvia's was often frequented by civil rights leaders like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King, in which a lot of people were coming here to convene, eat, and also speak about the plight of black people. Give thanks to a lot of what Sylvia Woods created, because not only was she an entrepreneur and a black entrepreneur at that time, but also created a space in which a lot of black people, African diaspora people, were able to see their own creation and also feel that type of comfort and home-cooked meal that they get, which is why Al Sharpton, Barack Obama, and a lot of other celebrities, Malcolm X, came here to reconvene and eat. So we're at the Apollo Theater. The Apollo Theater opened up in 1934. It was a joint kind of action in which a lot of black artists, a lot of black expression was able to be platformed because a white guy kind of employed a black person to be able to be the promoter for it. So you had a lot of black artists and black exhibitionists come here and kind of take the stage. Some notable names would be like Ella Fitzgerald, Diana Ross, and one that I want to focus on is named Mario Bauza. He was one of the first people to come and kind of platform Afro-Cuban music, and that was here center stage in New York in Harlem when he was performing alongside a couple of bands here at the Apollo. That's very important because the Apollo wasn't just a place in which African-American descent was platformed, but also Afro-Caribbean descent, which was showcased with Mario Bauza. One writer that I want to kind of bring up during this is Stokely Carmichael, with his toward black liberation, and the quote is cultural expression as a form of resistance. And it's very indicative of kind of the Apollo because not only were they showcasing African American cultural expression, but also African diaspora people cultural expression. And it just shows cases here today where you see celebrities like Drake want to make the one night in Apollo. So it's very cool, and you hear a lot of stories about the Apollo, so it's just interesting to see that not only does Harlem have the Schomburg Center, not only does Harlem have Sylvia's restaurant, Schomburg Center as research, but also the Apollo as a place for cultural expression. Harlem embodies the cultural connectivity of the African diaspora, where the Schomburg Center, Sylvia's restaurant, and the Apollo all weave together threads of history, creativity, and resilience. I want to emphasize that these are not just historic sites, but these are contemporary sites in which we can build upon and communalize in today. With that, it's been a great video. It's been a great time exploring Harlem, and I'll see y'all in the next one with love. Peace.